28%, more than almost any other category measured in this time period, which is why it's been reported that less and less people are going to fast food restaurants. And the same can be said for almost every chain across America, as these chains are squeezing every last dime out of American communities, while at the same time facing huge drops in consumers. Just recently, 99-cent stores across America have been closing, hundreds and hundreds of dollar stores leaving communities, and chains like even Starbucks began closing stores across the country. But funnily enough, all of these companies have still been able to maintain their revenue. How? What's going on here? And why are fast food chains raising their prices so dramatically? And even more importantly, how are they losing customers and still keeping the same revenue up? Well, trust me when I say that this matters a lot for you watching this right now, as this is an omen for the future of the American economy. And so of course, there's a bunch to unpack here. Now on the surface, fast food is more expensive for a few reasons. The cost of packaging and buying up the raw ingredients needed is naturally increasing with inflation and the food market as a whole. However, of course, these crazy fast food prices isn't happening across the entire world. It's more of an America-centric thing. And one of the main causes for this is rising minimum wages. As recently it was announced in California alone that all fast food workers would earn a minimum of $20. And this is starting to become the norm for many major cities within the US. And this is out of necessity, as the labor market is starting to turn their back against fast food establishments and chains. So the only way these chains can bring back workers is by incentivizing them financially, which is why CNBC noted that the labor supply for these chains is still below 2019 levels, or put more simply, there's more job openings and less applicants. Okay, so rising labor costs and industry costs is the reason for why fast food and all the other chains are becoming more expensive, right? Well, not entirely. You see, there's a lot more beneath the surface we need to unpack here. To stand out, recently companies like Wendy's and McDonald's have been pouring millions upon millions into their apps, and more specifically making you spend on their apps to get points, creating this chain and dopamine feedback loop, ensuring you always come back for your free occasional rewards and discounts. Going so far as to use these apps to monitor your habits, where you live, your lifestyle, to always constantly addict you into consuming the slop that they're shoving down your throats, that they're addicting you to. And by understanding this, you start to realize how dependent all of America is on chains as a whole, because the more dependent you are on these chains as products, the easier it is for them to raise their prices, as you have no other option, which is really concerning for anyone who lives in or has been to America. I mean, just recently I was in northern Florida and Georgia, and there's literally nothing in most of these small towns in southern America, apart from highway strips, malls, and anonymous signs to chain stores glowing everywhere. You can't even walk across the street to shops or local community areas. You have to drive no matter what, even if it's just across the road, because the entire landscape is designed to be anti-human. In most of America, there are no local food shops, there is no walkability, there is no affordable healthy food, just mega chains in most rural areas and low-income neighborhoods. I mean, most towns in America consist of usually just two types of chains, fast food stores and dollar stores. But the question is, why is this the case and how did it get there? It wasn't always like this. Well, in much of America, people are situated in food deserts, where there's hardly any local organic options, as it's too expensive for most people to enjoy, due to the economic state of the country. So instead, companies like Dollar General and 99-cent stores have swooped in, using all of their financial power to outprice any local regular food options, and instead replace local businesses and grocery shops with these giant chains. It's why so much of America feels like clone towns, the same small town of chains, highways, and strip malls, on repeat for hundreds of miles. And it's so accepted because at first the chains are seen as cheap, but as more and more people are realizing recently, this is just an illusion to make you dependent on the chains in the long run. Because instead of giving communities normal nice grocery stores, they create dollar stores, and most of these dollar stores aren't even actual dollar stores anymore. Especially for what you get in these sorts of places, you're getting very little substance back, as it's usually never actually cheaper in the long run. But by doing this, these chain stores have created a billion-dollar industry. Dollar stores, for example, like 99-cent stores, have been able to exist well within the American economy by replacing grocery stores for low-income workers in bad neighborhoods or people in rural areas, as these were some of the only places that everybody in America could afford, no matter what. And it worked because these stores made the American economy accessible to everybody, even the lowest income consumers, by supposedly offering hope to bad neighborhoods and rural areas, equalizing opportunity, and in turn providing jobs for those people. And it worked so well for so long that there's actually more dollar stores in America than Walmart, Starbucks, and McDonald's is combined. But now even dollar stores are raising prices, but not really in the same way as other chain stores like McDonald's. It works like this: for $1, you're starting to get less and less to the point that you end up spending more for less, and just like with rising fast food prices, people are now going to these chains even less, which is why Family Dollar has closed 1,000 stores and 99-cent stores have closed 371 stores. And it seems like this is a continuing trend, and yet weirdly, the two biggest dollar store companies, Dollar General and Dollar Tree, have been making billions in profits. Something weird's going on. Why are they closing and yet still making a profit? Is it really just prices going up? And by understanding this sentiment, you start to connect the dots to a pattern that is infecting all of America. Chain stores are making everyone dependent on them, then raising the prices to suck what little is left out of American communities, giving a terrible service and a terrible product for a premium price. And once these small communities are reliant on overpriced garbage that poison the community's health and wallet, it makes people across America sicker and poorer, which is destroying America from within quicker than you would initially realize. Take Branson, for example. It's a small town in Missouri, known for its beautiful nature, fishing, and hiking. It's completely surrounded by natural beauty, including lakes, woods, and wildlife. It was the kind of place where everyone knew each other, and local businesses from family-owned diners to independent bookstores formed the backbone of the community. However, during the 80s and 90s, Branson suddenly went a dramatic transformation at the very same time as the dollar store rise. You see, the town became a tourist attraction after it was featured on a television show called 60 Minutes as the live music capital of the universe.
A wonderful nowhere. A cafe, a five and dime. 3,000 and something souls in a town in the Ozarks, that's a mere blip on the two-lane strip of blacktop of Route 76. And it gets 4 million visitors a year.
And this coverage sparks an entertainment boom, with new theaters and venues springing up rapidly, and you would think this would be great for the small town. But as Branson's popularity grew, the chains across America were starting to take notice. And over time, these chains started to outnumber and overshadow all local businesses. The community fabric began to change as these larger companies brought in outside employees, and the profits started flowing back to corporate headquarters rather than staying within the local economy. Local shops and restaurants that had been community staples for decades found it increasingly impossible to compete with the pricing power of national chains. Many were forced to close their doors, and the entire social and cultural landscape of the town changed. Suddenly it was becoming a clone town, an exact replica of every other small town across America. McDonald's, dollar stores, giant highways. Community events that once centered around local happenings and traditional gatherings gave way to events aimed at just drawing tourists. The entire town's identity was numbed down, from a close-knit community to another clone town. And it's the same pattern for most towns across the states. And it's something that David Foster Wallace predicted in the book Infinite Jest, where he wrote of a future where eventually in America, year names are replaced by chain names. Instead of say 2024, for example, it would be the year of the Whopper instead. I mean, is it any surprise that 1 in 8 Americans are now becoming alcoholics? Depression and anxiety is at the highest levels ever recorded? I mean, despite all of America's technological advancements, all the new gadgets, the latest iPhones, the latest Starbucks flavors, the latest new Big Mac specials and rewards, nihilism is hanging in the air more than ever. The economic pressure is mounting, and people are becoming more and more isolated.
Here's South Korea, and right above it, it is, yeah, that's North Korea. They have an interesting relationship. One's rich and one's poor, one's a genius, one's insane. But even though there's the constant threat of getting nuked every day, South Korea has done quite well for itself. Not for long. Let's see some crises, Korean crises, to understand who they really are. When you look at South Korea, you see Korea as a little schlong sticking out of Asia. But in reality, South Korea is more like an island. Isolationist North Korea essentially has no connection to South Korea, and they definitely don't let any Samsungs or K-pop groups through. So it's shipping for the Koreans. The actual land here is cold, hilly, dense, and not rich in really anything at all. It was the water that made them rich. First of all, they have nothing they need. They need to import food, fertilizer, and 95% of their energy needs. South Korea is in the top 10 for natural gas, oil, and coal imports. If they see any dead dinosaur juice, they will suck it up and turn it into StarCraft power, which is a problem in case there is any disruption in this energy supply chain, which would never happen, right guys? As long as all the Middle Easterners, Indians, Southeast Asians, and Chinese work together, there will always be a flow of energy. Yeah, they're screwed. It doesn't help that the home life isn't much more stable. Above them is a crack addict tyrannical state who has dedicated literally its entire existence to wiping the South off the map. Half of the South's population who live in the greater Seoul area could legitimately be blown up within an hour if the North wanted that. And not only is there nuclear annihilation on the table and getting militarily flexed on every couple months, because the North isn't the only op in the region. There's China to the west, who they're not on the best ideological or economic terms with, despite being their largest trading partner, and to the east is their only friend. In the region, it's Japan. They fucking hate each other. Maybe it's from that one time Japan burnt all their cities, killed their people, raped all their women, and still didn't apologize or even recognize it happened. Maybe that's why. The only reason they're friends is because of this guy. The US, Japan, and South Korea are kind of in a love triangle, with the Asian countries fighting for the American heart and American wallet. South Korea's only realistic way to secure shipping lanes is to bribe the US to protect them. Whether it be from trade deals or defense pacts or putting 30,000 American soldiers on the peninsula, the third most on Earth, South Korea needs the US for protection from their region. Realistically, if the North took a little too much heroin one day and decided today was the day to bomb the South to bits, the US is their main deterrent. And without the American Navy, they would need permission from both China and Japan to ship their goods off and get the inputs they need to prevent industrial collapse. Something of a wet dream for both of those countries. So unless they can join either the Japanese or Chinese spheres, they almost definitely won't. They need their guarantor, the US, to keep them safe, keep them functioning, to keep growing their portfolio, and to keep sending their boy bands to Western tweens everywhere. No access to the ocean means no electricity, no food, and no money coming in, as we'll see. That's a scary position to be in, so better keep that access, huh? Now let's talk about money. How do you get it? Well, I just put ads about things I don't really use in my YouTube videos, and money magically just comes into my account. But for people with normal jobs, they have to create some sort of value to society. So what value do the Koreans bring? Well, if you ask this in the 1950s, the answer would be not much. South Korea, from decades of Japanese occupation and a war right after with the North, was one of the poorest nations on the planet in the 50s and 60s. About as poor as North Korea. And today, after decades of watching motivational videos and taking ice cold showers, it is one of the most developed nations on Earth, about 30 times richer than the North is now. What's the secret guide? Let's go back to that geography to tell you. Like I said before, they pretty much have no natural resources and need to rely on foreign aid for enough food to eat. Damn, that's not going to help them get rich. They need to think outside of the box. And so their dictator at the time, Park Chung-lee, thought of a corporatist strategy. It was either the least free market system or the most goddamn free market economy this world has ever seen, depending on how you look at it. The strategy? Set up huge businesses called chaebols, literally meaning rich families, and give them huge subsidies, huge tax breaks, massive loans, and made special tariffs just for them. Gee, sounds a bit unfair, right? Yeah, it does, but they weren't meant to compete inside of South Korea, they were meant to compete globally. The point of the chaebol was to export as many finished goods as humanly possible. It started off with them exporting things like steel and chemicals, but as the South Koreans invested more into education, aka making their kids cram 12 hours of knowledge into a day, they obviously got a little bit smarter and it evolved into exporting high-tech items like cars, phones, and TVs. On the global stage, these chaebols were a miracle on the Han River, turning American dollars into South Korean won, changing the country from a backwater into a top 10 most exporting nation. But domestically, you might have been able to guess that these rich families who were selected have a little bit of outsized power. First of all, they do everything in the country. Take, for example, the chaebol latte. They started out as a chewing gum company but evolved into selling food, drinks, retail stores, construction, chemicals, resorts, hotels, aluminum, finance, amusement parks, and digital technology. Talk about monopoly, and they're still only the 5th largest chaebol. Almost everything needed to run the country comes from a conglomerate. It's estimated that about 60% of the South Korean growth came from chaebols, and today they make up about 80% of South Korean product despite only accounting for around 10% of the jobs. They don't keep around slackers either. If you don't export enough, you're cut off, so they tend to be the ones to drive innovation in Korea, but some of them do stick around. LG, Hyundai, and Samsung. They're the big dogs in Korea. Samsung alone makes up about 20% of GDP, and they've done very well in the global economy, even starting a blue-green text bubble worth Apple. The advantages of chaebols are obvious: quick exports and high innovative growth, but the disadvantages are possibly even more obvious: corruption in the government, terrible labor laws, actually just ignoring labor laws altogether, and mass inequality. They led to a broken social ladder in South Korea. Well, less of a ladder and more like a cliff, with Samsung standing at the top, who's holding a shotgun and is ready for blood. Young Koreans are increasingly broke nowadays. Small firms usually get their ideas stolen by massive chaebols. Only about 25% of young people believe they can improve their economic status through work alone, and suicide is the largest cause of death among young Koreans. No wonder the most popular show of 2021 was about South Korean wealth inequality. Samsung was probably the one behind the Squid Games. The hierarchy of the Korean system and economic miracle has also led South Koreans to stop having kids, which, wait, that's another one of their crises. And then there's the third crisis of South Korea. They stopped having children a long time ago, and now Korea #1 for lowest birth rates worldwide. As of the early 2020s, it's around 0.8 kids for every woman, which means that 52 million people right now, they could easily drop to 36 million by 2050 and 15 million by 2100. South Korea is a shrinking country, and contrary to the popular belief among academics, it wasn't the fact that League of Legends doomed South Korea to be a nation of virgins. Nah, it's more complicated than that.